Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel with word that Donald Trump has signed an executive order creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve as well as a United States digital asset stockpile. With word of that breaking just last night, it sparked a lot of conversation, and I already made a video covering most of the details surrounding that in great detail, which is mostly not what this video is going to be. This one's going to be a little bit more interesting for XRP holders, specifically, I will say. There are all sorts of people speculating, how are you going to, given that Trump has said some pro stuff about XRP, how are you going to get XRP in a stockpile? How does it get? There's all sorts of people in the community speculating that Ripple would actually just fund that. Okay, interesting, maybe, if some random person in our community saying it, maybe that's a fun topic for conversation, but it gets a lot more fun and a lot more interesting when a former Ripple employee posits the idea that Ripple could indeed fund a United States XRP reserve, or as part of a strategic crypto reserve, or as now we know the term is being used again, it's actually a digital asset stockpile. But still, that's the idea set forth from a former Ripple employee. So we're going to break it down. But before going any further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so just a little bit of catching up to speed in case you missed some of the more important details here. Here's the headline from Reuters. Trump signs order to establish strategic Bitcoin reserve. So that was last night. Worth mentioning this headline, though, from March 3rd, also from Reuters. Trump names cryptocurrencies in strategic reserve, sending prices up. And of course, XRP was cited then, and it was being called a strategic reserve by the president just days ago. Now it's called a digital asset stockpile, so that part definitely changed here. And we're also seeing that Bitcoin is getting some favoritism because there's a specific Bitcoin strategic reserve. So anyway, piece reads as follows. U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Thursday to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve a day before meeting with executives from the cryptocurrency industry at the White House. The reserve will be capitalized with Bitcoin owned by the federal government that was forfeited as part of criminal or civil asset forfeiture proceedings, the White House crypto czar billionaire David Sachs said in a post on social media platform X. Okay, so it's not the case that there's going to be some dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin by the United States government. That's not what this is. And there was a note that any purchases, and the way it was worded, it sounds like if there are any, it would be rather minimal. It has to be the case that the United States, it's not going to increase the budget deficit. So we're a long way off from a balanced budget. So that isn't necessarily something going to be happening anything soon. So effectively what's happening, at least for now, and I still am very happy that this happened, what's happened for now is that the Bitcoin that the United States already had is now going to be classified as being in a strategic Bitcoin reserve. They have the same amount of Bitcoin. It's about 200,000 Bitcoin, although they're going to do an audit to get the exact number. The reason the United States government has any Bitcoin is from forfeiture proceedings, as cited here. So people did illegal stuff with Bitcoin, and then the United States government ended up with Bitcoin because the bad guys didn't get to have it anymore. That's pretty much it. So it's also the case, though, that any cryptocurrencies that are going to be held in the digital stockpile, they're not going to be purchased. Like literally, and this was explicitly stated, they're not going to be purchased. So they're going to try and purchase Bitcoin. So it's getting a little favoritism. They're gonna, but not at the expense of increasing the budget. But for any other coin, XRP or anything else, they're not going to do that. Well, okay, so then what the hell is the digital reserve? Because you'd have to already have XRP then. Does that mean that the United States government has XRP? Maybe, I don't know. I literally just don't know. And that's a question that all sorts of people have right now. I won't be surprised if that's the case. There could have been any number of illegal proceedings, so forfeiture as a result. Who knows what court cases have gone down where some amount of a crypto fortune were acquired, and maybe XRP was a part of that. And so maybe as a result, the United States government does have some amount of XRP. But even if so, I wouldn't imagine that it's some sort of monstrous amount. I wouldn't guess anyway. I'd kind of be surprised if that's the case, which means that the digital stockpile probably not going to be that big. Well, okay, so that seems like not that exciting. I mean, it's exciting, but not to the degree that some people were hoping. Like, I still think it's fantastic. I think this sets a great tone. I'm very thrilled that this news happened, and it is Trump following through with a campaign promise. So I'm happy to see that. But for XRP specifically, is it going to be that big of a deal in terms of supply and demand dynamics? Doesn't look like it. Not anytime soon, anyway. Now it could set the table for stuff happening that's on a much bigger scale, in the years and decades to come. That's certainly true. That's a conversation worth having. But a former Ripple employee thinks that Ripple actually could, and presumably might, actually just invest into this fund. So this is where it gets interesting. There's a post from Fox Business journalist Charles Gasparino. And this is from just a few hours before the news broke about the creation of the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, and it was created by executive order. And so Charles Gasparino at 3:13 p.m. Central Time on Thursday wrote, "Scoop, sources tell me the White House is preparing a further classification of its so-called strategic crypto reserve either later today or tomorrow. My guess is it will address the funding mechanism, i.e. the potential roadblock for buying digital coins with taxpayer money. They would need congressional approval, which is next to impossible. Look for possible solutions, such as seeding it with confiscated crypto. 200,000 bitcoins have been seized from alleged bad guys, or using the sovereign wealth fund idea to finance the purchases. Something floated by Chris Giancarlo, story developing." And so that's pretty much what happened. The 200,000 bitcoins that have been seized from the bad guys, that's the United States forever, and it's just going to be hodled. Which, again, I'm very happy to see that. That is fantastic. But what about XRP? Because again, is there some sort of secret stash that's been forfeited by the bad guys that we just don't know about? I mean, technically maybe. As soon as I find out, I will share that on my channel. It's just nobody knows right now. And actually, I don't even know that the Trump administration knows, because they're going to do an audit not just on the government's Bitcoin holdings, but on everything in crypto. He cited that also. So I don't think that they know. And then different government agencies may have different cryptos, and it's just like you got to throw all the data together because there might not be the best communication from one agency to another. So we'll get the answers. I just don't know what is this second. But here's a post from former Ripple employee Sean McBride, and so he responded to Charles Gasparino, and he said, "Or a company like Ripple could fund the reserve with the XRP they have in escrow. Of course, you wouldn't mention this due to your confirmation bias." And then he shared a little clowning emoji, writing clown boy. Okay, I certainly will acknowledge Ripple could choose to do that. They could do that, and then it would be to the tune of what? Like, what quantity? Would it be $100,000 worth of XRP? Would it be $1 million worth of XRP? $10 million worth of XRP? $1 billion worth of XRP? What would it be? And what would the threshold be? And what's that look like? So I will, to be clear, and I'm skeptical Ripple's going to do this in any sort of meaningful way, if at all. So it's a fun critical thinking exercise, and I'd love to hear what all of you think in the comment section below here. I'm skeptical of this becoming a thing, but of course I acknowledge Ripple can do this if they want to. Anybody that owns any asset, any business that owns any asset, can give it to another person or business or the government if they want to. That's a thing that can technically happen. And so Sean McBride, former Ripple employee, he seems to think that there's a reasonable chance this could occur. Now, I've never had any insider information, so he'd probably know better than me. But just looking at it, having always come from the outside here, this is the type of thing that I'm skeptical of, especially when you start talking about it happening as a result of anything that's happened with the SEC v. Ripple lawsuit. So here's a post from Good Morning Crypto making what he's calling a bold prediction here. And I just don't think this is right. And if I'm wrong, happy to eat my words, because frankly, I'd love for this to happen. I'm a big skeptic on this idea, but here's what he wrote. Bold prediction. Ripple pays SEC the $125 million settlement in XRP tokens, and XRP is then added to the U.S. reserve. Again, Again, Ripple can do that if they want to. Is this remotely reasonable to suppose that they actually will? Well, here is my initial reaction upon reading that. I wrote and I said, Ripple shareholders would hate that. Ripple has a fiduciary responsibility to them. So the idea of Ripple putting, especially if you're literally talking about $125 million, and that's somehow related, and because again, that's what they're supposed to be, right? That's the judgment from Judge Torres in the SEC v. Ripple case. You think that Ripple shareholders would be thrilled about this? Mind you, and we're not privy to exactly what's happening in the background here, but there's all sorts of speculation from attorneys within the XRP community that the reason that we haven't seen the conclusion of the appeals, because mind you, there's an appeal from the SEC and then a cross appeal from Ripple, and that case is still lingering now. There's all sorts of speculation that the reason we haven't seen that conclude is because Ripple's actually the one that doesn't want this to go away yet, not unless there's some sort of terms here that are favorable to them. If anything, Ripple would be trying to get that figure down as low, as close to zero as possible. Now, given that there's already been a judgment against Ripple, the SEC and Ripple can't just agree that it goes to zero. That's not a thing that they can do. It's very I made a whole video talking about this, so I won't go into great detail here, but Attorney Hogan has talked about this, and Attorney Murphy was talking about this idea too, that there's technically you could go down that path and try and make that go away, but they just can't, just the couple of them, the SEC and Ripple, they can't just make that happen even if they want, because there's literally a judgment here. And so the judgment, that's not just going to go away. So there shouldn't be a path here for this to even happen. And I just don't believe for a second that Ripple shareholders, even if Ripple voluntarily gave $125 million, I do not think that Ripple shareholders would be thrilled to see that at all. Because mind you, even though Ripple hasn't had an IPO yet, you can buy shares of Ripple, the company, on secondary markets. You can do that if you're an accredited investor. And so they do have shareholders. And that brings all sorts of fiduciary responsibilities to light, meaning that I don't think there's a path forward there. Somebody also doesn't think this is reasonable. Somebody named TW Laurel Crest from the XRP community wrote to Good Morning Crypto and said, no, the reserve is only for seized crypto. Nothing about the government buying any crypto. That explains the sell-off. And so Good Morning Crypto wrote back and said, this would be seized crypto. Okay, I want to know how the hell that works. So the government just gets to seize crypto? Mind you, the Bitcoin that they hold, it was taken from evildoers. Ripple's not an evildoer, and they have to actually write checks from their company treasury to pay for any fines or anything of the sort. That doesn't sound like this isn't like you don't just get to take the XRP though. That's not how this works. So anyway, I wrote to him and I said, the Judge Torres order was for $125 million. Dollars, not $125 million worth of XRP. I also think it would be highly unethical if the government found some creative way to steal XRP from Ripple, and no one should be supportive of such a thing. And by the way, I firmly stand by that. If anybody thinks that would be good, that XRP property of Ripple just gets taken in America, no thank you. No, I don't find that to be remotely reasonable. Absolutely not. And it's also not what the judge ordered. The judge ordered there were ultimately penalties, and I don't recall all the specifics, but the figures, right? $125 million worth. And that's not to be done. You can't just decide that it's going to be in something else. Like you can't decide, okay, well, you said $125 million, but what if instead, now hear me out, what if instead we give you $125 million worth of cupcakes? How about that? Is that going to be fine? Is that going to work? No, it would not. It absolutely would not. And it also wouldn't then just land in this reserve automatically, because the funds are going to go, any sort of proceeds as a result of this order, the $125 million, it's already designated, it's already spoken for. It doesn't then just magically flow to a completely different use case. That's not how any of this works. And the idea of this is pretty repulsive to me. Like, I would be honestly offended and just disgusted by the government if they were just doing something to seize assets from a company in this manner. especially when there was already an order that came through from the judge and there was no fraud to be found. Or you can't just be taking people's assets. No, absolutely not. No seizing the XRP from Ripple. Absolutely not. Now, again, if Ripple wants to donate some and they think that it would be equivalent to like a marketing expense or something like that, okay, maybe they do. But if you're talking about $125 million, no, you could do a very small amount and get the same headlines that you'd get even if you spent 125 million. So why would you spend 125 million? You wouldn't. And either way, it's not going to meaningfully change the supply and demand dynamics in the short term anyway. It's like it's not going to do that either. All of this is just silliness here. Like I mean, it's kind of fun to have a conversation about this, but I see where some people are going with this, and I just respectfully disagree with the vast majority of the comments I've said that are supporting such a thing. I just don't find it likely to be the case, and we can respectfully disagree. That's why maybe you listening, maybe you're one of the people that thinks that this is a thing that is fair or reasonable. Okay. Well, not seizing XRP, especially when they have no legal right to do that, absolutely not. There would be, it's just awful. I can't imagine that Ripple's holding the cards here, folks. The war on crypto has ended, Donald Trump has stated, which means that the SEC wants this to end, which means it only ends if Ripple wants them to. And now Ripple won't let it happen unless there are favorable terms. That would be my guess. That's the speculation from attorneys in the XRP community. That makes sense to me. So I think that number goes way, way, way lower. But if any amount of XRP ends up in a reserve, it's not going to be $125 million. Can we please be reasonable? And again, it would be disgusting if it were forced upon them. So it's an interesting thought. And since a former Ripple employee brought it up and it's what everybody's talking about tonight anyway on social media in the community, I just thought I'd mention it. So you guys tell me what you think in the comment section below. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.